Right, so we've sorted the sound problem out there. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Thursday, the 1st of December, 2022. So I'd like to start following the agenda by, first of all, taking any apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, I've received apologies from Councillors Fairless, Aiken, Runner Thompson, Dale and Dunbar, Reverend Lennox, John Sanderson and Lynn Houghton.
Thank you very much for that. That's noted. There's a standard item on every meeting, which is disclosures of members' interests. You have your interests recorded by the Council, but does anyone have any interests which are pertinent to this specific meeting that you need to declare now? I'm not seeing any, so that's fine. Thank you for that. Next item number 3, forward plan of key decisions. Chris Angus, you're going to take us through pages 1 to 4.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's just one thing I wanted to raise on the forward plan that I've just noticed. On the work programme in January, this committee is expecting the National Funding Formula report, which would normally go to Cabinet after it's been to fax. That's not on the forward plan, and it probably should be, so I'll clarify the date for the National Funding Formula. But other than that, the forward plan's just a note.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the Sorry, I forgot my microphone there. Thank you for that, Chris. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, which is the Care Proceedings and Public Law Outline Annual Report on Progression. In your report packs, it's pages 5 to 12. The report's going to be taken by Katie this morning, who will introduce herself. But before Katie goes through the report, I'd like to bring in Graham Writer just to give a bit of context to it, if that's all right, Graham. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report has been brought on an annual basis for scrutiny by members because going back to 2017, some serious concerns were being expressed by Her Honour Judge Hudson, who's the family court judge in Newcastle, about the quality and consistency of Northumberland's practice within the court arena. So as part of our work to try and improve that, we wanted to ensure that members have scrutiny and oversight of our work in that area, and that's the reason for this report. It's been brought annually, and Katie will go through some more detail today in terms of where we're at today, what the issues for consideration by yourselves are.
Katie, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Scaval. I'm a Senior Manager in Children's Services, and thank you for taking the time to read the report. Just really on the back of what Graham was saying, I think the report does highlight the journey and there's some real key findings that's happened this year for children's services. So firstly, Ofsted's focused inspection earlier in the summer, the letter of findings was really quite complimentary on some of the social work practice, with the voice of the child really being seen and evidenced, and the management oversight and the scrutiny given within children's services around planning for our young people. We've also have the new pre-birth team that we've set up, and that's been founded based on the Born Into Care review that was completed earlier, to really focus on the work with parents who have had significant involvement with children's services before, have had difficulties with caring for children or have children no longer in their care, and to really put a focus on social work practice and how to make change for those parents and break the cycle. So Northumberland's pre-birth team went live at the end of September. We've got just under about 20 unborn babies open to us at the moment that meet our criteria. So it's an exciting opportunity to work with families in a different way that we have before, with a very intensive intervention plan. So we'll be looking forward to bringing that back next year to show what our evaluations are and our findings and what impact we've managed to achieve. We've also continued our strengthening relationships with CAFCAS and the court. So we continue as an authority to meet with the lead family court judge, in addition to CAFCAS. Our most recent meetings with both the judge and CAFCAS were quite positive, with some positive examples of social work practice. The family judge was complimentary on a number of cases and a number of social work practices. she also had feedback from judges in anticipation for that meeting, who also gave some positive feedback and did comment that that's not something, you know, that's previously happened before in terms of that freely giving some positive feedback. I think it's key to say that you can see in the report that we haven't achieved the 26-week timescale that has been set out for completing care proceedings from beginning to end. We're not on our own. Within the region, we're very similar to our counterparts. There will be another drive from the courts to try and achieve the 26 weeks. Our lead family judge is very aware of every family that has exceeded the 26 weeks, and she oversees those cases. She brings them to our attention and makes sure that she actually has an involvement in the planning, making sure that we conclude as soon as we can for our young people. I think that's probably the highlights from me.
Okay. Katie, thank you very much. And obviously members have had this report. What we normally do here is we normally go into questions from members. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start first, and then obviously I'd be happy to take questions from members of the committee, because we've got two functions to perform, and I'm conscious this is your first meeting, so it's useful obviously for everyone to be reminded. So the recommendations that we're looking at in this report is that we note the content, but also identify areas of further scrutiny. So that's where I'm kind of coming from with my first question. So on page 9 of the report, it says conclusion 9, which is some children have experienced delay with proceedings taking, on average, 39.7 weeks. The impact on Northumberland children is very similar to that experience regionally and nationally. How can that be improved? Is that an issue within us as a local authority and other local authorities, or is it the courts, or is it actually both meshing together to cause this delay? Because it does reference earlier on, the target is 26 weeks. That's half a year. That's still a long time. But we're looking at nearly a year. So how could that be improved? Is it us? Is it them? Or is it a bit of both?
Excellent question. And it is a combination of a lot of things. There's currently, I've recently met with our leads in CAFCAS, and we're undertaking a deep dive to look at the specific issues. There are so many factors that happen within care proceedings that can cause delay and that do cause delay. Some of those are expert assessments. They can take longer than anticipated. Sometimes they report late. Sometimes you need additional assessments on the back of those assessments. There are also instances where the court timescales, the court availability delays some final hearings, and that's a huge pressure at the moment. There's many factors that can influence whether or not a case can conclude in 26 weeks. So actually at the moment, within next year, Northumberland and CAFCAS, we're going to work together on all of our cases that have gone beyond 26 weeks and really dive into how many were as a result of social work practice, you know, delayed statements, work or court work or court timescales. So, yeah.
I think, Graham, you wanted to come in as well on that.
Yeah, and I think no court nationally achieves the 26-week threshold, that timescale, and I think there are others that take even longer than the North East Court do. I think when we first reviewed this, we were focusing on our practice, and I'm confident that where we can, that our practice is progressing work effectively in the vast majority of cases before court. A lot of it, as Katie says, is to do with court capacity and court requirements as well. And sometimes in care proceedings, where we are looking, for example, where children might be placed for adoption, we have to look at all alternatives within the family, absolutely rightly and thoroughly. And sometimes we find family members who we've not known about before, who haven't been informed to us before, come late in the proceedings, which means absolutely right that we have to assess them and their ability to provide the care for the child, the rest of that child's life before we can make any decisions about adoption. So as Kate says, there are a number of factors, but I think from our point of view, our practice and our oversight of our practice means that wherever possible, our practice is done in a timely way in the vast majority of cases, and a lot of the delays are to do with structural and capacity issues within the court arena.
Got any questions? Mr Hodgson?
Yeah, councillors.
Go ahead.
No, it intrigued me, when I read the report. Is 26 weeks an arbitrary figure that was just imposed, and the truth is it will never ever be achieved? And in which case, do we not need to go back to government and say, look, the reality is that best will in the world, if you're not going to increase the capacity in the courts, our social workers are working full out. The average is 31 or 30 days. We as a nation, across all the local authorities, we cannot get it to 26 weeks. You've imposed something that is unachievable. Is that the reality? Or is there something that you can see within Northumberland and the local group can get down to as close as possible to 26 weeks?
That feedback is given nationally through regional directors of children's services, and I think it is accepted that 26 week is very aspirational, and in the vast majority of work will not be achievable. We will achieve it in some cases and some earlier, but the average is going to be longer. The average will be longer. And if we just talk through that, so Katie, in the report, we talk about robust processes, even about decision making to go into proceedings, because this is such a serious issue where we're applying to the court to gain and share parental responsibility so we can make decisions about the safety of the child, to remove a child from the care of their family. It's such a huge decision that we've revised and amended our processes to make sure that decision is made at a very senior level. We will look for all alternatives, safe alternatives, and there's something called pre-proceedings work that we also monitor and track. So our social workers and team managers will present to our legal gateway panel where we think the threshold is met, but we will look at alternatives which are called work under pre-proceedings, which gives families access to legal aid, the opportunity to understand that we are thinking so seriously that we are considering going to court, but give them opportunities to work with to find improvements or to mitigate the risks in whatever way without us going to court. So we do put a lot of work in even before we get to those points, before we can do it. But to answer the substantive point, I don't know court that I'm aware of nationally meets the 26-week target. We're not outliers at all, and I think that message does go back nationally through a range of forums.
And what's their response to that?
There hasn't been one particularly, but I think for us, the issue, I mean, we would want children's permanence to be sorted as quickly as possible, but for obvious reasons. We would want a child, the purpose of the focused visit from Ofsted recently was to try and make sure that we were doing everything we could to get a child to their permanent long-term placement as soon as possible, for all the reason that gives them stability, security, and will give them the best chance to progress. But I think for us it's about the quality of the work that we do in the context that we do.
So what you've got is you've got a body like Ofsted that will come and look at your practices, and you've got a gold star from Ofsted to an extent. I mean, there's a couple of areas for improvement, but those couple of areas for improvement, my reading that, would not have actually impacted on the 39 weeks. So in other words, as far as Ofsted are concerned, you're doing everything you possibly can to get this through the courts as quickly as possible. But who's actually monitoring the courts? Presumably that's left to the Ministry of Justice. And they're marking their own homework, presumably.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say I could probably answer that rather than Ofsted. Yes. And that's where I'm trying to delve into what the system is. If we're doing everything right our side, there's clearly something around the court. And I get that point about the due diligence and the fact that we really have to make sure that every conceivable option is considered before any serious steps are taken. Because quite frankly, the family judge would look at any report and go, there's great big gaps and anomalies here. And then that would throw it out, and then it would cause even further delays. So I get that, but I think it's a really valid question. But I think the assurance which you've had is that directors of children's services are feeding this back, both in regional forums and nationally as well. So hopefully there'll be some understanding of how that target can either be revised realistically or it can be achieved given what the
More
current
resources,
target.
yeah.
The current target is. But very good question. So I'm now coming to, in this order, Mark Swinburne and Caroline Ball.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for coming along, Katie. I know it's your first meeting. Hopefully it's not a baptism of fire and you will return. Graham's used to it. One of the questions I was going to ask, Wayne's already covered, and that's, I'm going to say whose fault it is. Maybe that's not the right terminology, but one thing I did want to ask, this may not happen, I don't know. The work that is carried out is ultimately to find the best solution for the child, and everybody works towards that point. There's a massive, we all know from the reports that we get, there's a massive amount of detailed work that goes in to achieve that. And then it gets to the court stage, and if I say the hope is that it's rubber stamped, I'm not trying to put that down and think of it as a simple thing, that it is just rubber stamped, but if it gets to the court stage and it is agreed, by the judge, what happens if somebody then within the family disagrees and wants to appeal against that decision? Does that clock restart, or does that time continue and carry on? That was my question. I'm not saying, I don't know if that actually happens, but if it does, what's the effect on the timing? Thank you.
Yeah, so once the judge has made a final care plan, so at the end of, like you're talking about, at the end of proceedings, when the judge has either said the child can go home or to another family member or a plan of adoption, and the final orders are made, the parent can appeal if they have the grounding. So they would have to get legal advice. And so within the judges, within their judgment and within the legal paperwork that they would submit, a solicitor representing the parent would have to see that they have threshold and argument to be able to appeal to that. But no, the clock wouldn't continue with our 26-week timescale. Anything that happens beyond that would be something new that starts again.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So just with regards to the pre-birth team, is it an additional team with new staff, or is it people that's been retasked within the organisation? And also the review that's going to happen about the effectiveness, what will the measurables be on that? So what's the plan? Thank you.
So we've actually recruited within our own service. We have 4 social workers who are from the area teams that have gone into the pre-birth team, but they are starting without their other caseloads, so they're able to focus on just the caseload of having the babies, the unborn babies at the moment. There's a number of systems that we're going through to review the pre-birth team. So we are using, there's part of it is the data and performance information. That'll feed into some of it. We're also looking at CAFCAS and working alongside them in terms of outcomes in our partner relationships. We're also looking at feedback from families. So we're in the process of developing tools to be able to, as we go along this process, gain feedback from our partner agencies as we're working with them and the families that we're working with. We've already had our first bit of feedback from some parents who've said, I wish this happened years ago, thank you for the opportunity. So we're capturing that all, we're making sure that's all recorded, and we'll be able to fill that in towards the 9-month point when we'll look at a full evaluation. So it's quite exciting. I'm quite looking forward to some of the areas that we're going to look to gain the feedback that we haven't necessarily been able to achieve for some of our other families.
Yeah, I think one of the strengths again identified by Ofsted was about our quality of practice oversight of the work. So the pre-birth team would become part of that. So, for example, practice days, which is one of the things where I and a couple of senior managers land on a service area and do effectively what Ofsted would do. Would sample work, look at work alongside the worker, look on the systems that are, look at the performance information that is there for us to help look at what is working well and where areas might be improved. So the specific work in relation to the pre-birth team. And I've got to say the pre-birth team came out of an analysis of the data and feedback we knew and understand from parents who've been through the process and what we understand the levels of need to be for that. But I do think there is another element of that which does help staff retention, you know, giving more specific work, but equally the balance that we have to have is we need our locality services not to lose all the staff into the specialist teams as well, keep those working as well. But so it is a balance, but I think it is of interest for staff who have some experience to move into that team as well as part of retention.
Can I just quickly come back on that? With the team now having that specialist work and not having that caseload, is it having any impact on the wider team and the caseload that they're now carrying as well?
We should see a reduction for the locality teams because we're taking the work away from what they would be doing. So the idea is that over time there will be less burden, I guess, on the social workers with in the localities with a range of work rather than the specific to the pre-birth.
Okay.
It is in the context of increasing demand as well, but I think that's absolutely a fair question. It certainly will reduce work that would have gone into locality teams, as Katie says, and focus their, you know, and partly value based the effectiveness of that work, but is in the context of increasing demand generally coming into social care.
So I think covering the point that you made there is that it's an assurance this committee is looking for that setting up a very good system isn't having an unintended consequence on the workload of other staff. And I think we've had some assurance there that the long-term plan is that this should actually reduce overall workloads. So I think that's a very good question. There's a couple more questions I've got. If can, again, it touches on the pre-birth. How many, is it a formal order, but how many families are we working with on a pre-birth basis? Because it says total number of 108 Northumberland children subject to public law proceedings. But what does it look like in terms of the pre-birth team? What's their caseload?
So at the moment, we only went live at the end of September, so our timescale's quite small. So we've got just under 20 new unborn babies at the moment that have been referred in during that window. So anything that was before that has gone into the area teams. And that's because we want that one of the key ethos of the team is one worker. So it's from the day of referral, you have the same social worker all the way through until the very end of case closure. So it's 20 at the moment. When we did the scoping exercise earlier in the year last year, we anticipated over 100 babies within a year. We've already reached over what we think we were going to get. So
I'm just trying to do the maths there. Because if you're planning, you're predicating on 100, 20 within the space of 2 months is quite concerning, really, isn't it? And in terms of those referral pathways, where do those how do you originate? Is that through partners in the health service? Is it GPs? Is it other bodies? How does that actually happen?
So it's anybody who learns of the pregnancy. And we haven't changed the referral pathway in terms of the front door service. What we have done is our team manager for the pre-birth team works alongside the manager in the front door service to capture any referral at the very beginning of the pregnancy. So what we've had to do is a lot of work with our partner agencies is don't wait until the viable pregnancy, which is what our normal procedure would be. As soon as you learn of the pregnancy, let us know and we'll make contact with the family. And so we're hoping to work with families as soon as we physically can.
Right, that's good. So in terms of going back to what the purpose of this report coming to us is about, is around assurances and questioning. So I think coming from that and some other questions, you've indicated in the space of around 2 months that we're supporting 20 pre-births. You've done some scoping which is showing you'd predicated it being 100 over a calendar year. So based on the current numbers, you're probably looking more around the 180, 200, so it may in effect be double. I think what we'd want as a committee is an assurance, and I know that you'll be doing this, but I want to say it publicly, that officers are looking at this to ensure that the resources are there for the team, should they need to actually get extra resources to support that pre-birth work. So I think that's something that we would want as a committee to get that assurance that staff are supported and ultimately, obviously, the baby is supported. So if that could be taken away as just, you know, as an action from today, that would be really good.
Could I just add on to that? So at the beginning of our proposal to set up the pre-birth team, we didn't factor in the social work support role. And with the amount of babies that we have got coming through, we do have 2 social work support assistants complementing the work of the social worker. So we're already looking at what more we can do to improve. Yeah.
So thank you for that. And again, just going back to the beginning of the presentation when Graham was speaking, and I think it is important to reiterate this, you know, we're looking at some granular detail here about how we can make sure that the service continues and it continues well. But I go back to when I was Cabinet Member Children's Services back in May of 2017, and the first thing within the first few days of me joining the Cabinet, I was given a very confidential briefing, which was all about stuff which wasn't particularly pleasant. And one of them was about the view of Judge Hudson and her view, and well, the judge's view of this authority, which was not good. And it was based on reports not being complete, not being accurate, huge amount of detail left. And that's been transformed. And I think that we should put on record the support to the staff and the senior managers for actually doing that, because those reports back to 2017, which were seriously lacking in detail, had massive impact on that long-term life chance of young people and an impact on their families as well. So I think that we recognise the huge amount of work that's been done over a number of years to transform that, and we're loved now, which is really good. So I think there's a really positive story there, and that's down to the hard work of staff and to the leadership which has been shown there. So I think, you know, I'd like that to be noted and fed back to staff, please. So, again, just summarising the report, I think we've noted it, we've read it, we've identified some areas which to be looked at in terms of assurance. So on that basis, I'm happy for the notes from today to go forward and for actions for officers to take. So thank you very much, members, for taking part. And thank you very much as well, Katie, for that. And hopefully we'll see you at more meetings as well. So that's very good. We now move on to item number 5 on the report, which is the Family and Children's Services Work Programme and Monitoring Report, which Chris Angus is going to take again. Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so as I said earlier, the National Funding Formula report that is due to come in January, I will clarify the date on that, and it might be that that comes in February instead. The other thing that should be on there for January is an update on the school reorganisation plan. That normally comes every year, and that will be coming in January. And I think I had a discussion with Councillor Daly before about inviting Sunderland College to come and attend FACS in January as well. I will also bring back the scope and report on the task and finish group that was discussed at the last meeting, and that will come in January for members to agree, and then we can start that task and finish group in the new year. Yeah.
So it'll be actually Northumberland College. We'd love Sunderland College to come. We'd love them, no problem. But it's Northumberland. And it's actually they are the parent organisation of Northumberland College. So we'll be inviting, I think, Graham Potts, who's the new head at Northumberland, to come, I think, in January or February, aren't we? Yeah, so that'll be very good. Right, so I have not been informed of any urgent business until now. So, Councillor
It's just about the work plan, just about the school transport. Yeah. Just wondering when that is coming back. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get a date on that. It's been deferred from, I think it was meant to come to this meeting, and it was deferred. So I'm waiting to get a solid date on that before I put it on the work programme again, and I'll let you know when I've got that.
Yeah, we'll pick up on that one. And Councillor Thorne.
Yes, Chair. It's a good news story. It's about an infant school teacher, and, you know, far too often these people give amazing service to our authority, and then they retire and they're not recognised. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of participating in a funeral for my infant school teacher at Newton-on-the-Moor School when she taught me back in 1958. A friend had come for dinner at Embleton Hall when I ran it as a hotel, and this friend told me she was a teacher of Miss Middleton. So I penned a letter back to her saying what an inspirational teacher she had been at Newton-on-the-Moor Primary School. And obviously the people went through this letter, contacted me and asked me yesterday to go back and, would you believe, read The Owl and the Pussycat, which she taught me back in 1958. So it was moving, but I also really enjoyed it because, you know, we were sort of marking and celebrating her contribution to Northumberland County Council, not just for the 20 years she was at Newton-on-the-Moor, but she then went on and did another 20 years at Annex South School. So that was a moving occasion.
I'll let your name checker officially now. Go on, the full name?
Yes, Miss Nancy Middleton.
Thank you for that. Very and well noted. So thank you for that. So on that basis, thank you very much for everyone attending this morning, and thank you to officers as well for attending, and our scrutiny and admin team. So thank you again.